Welcome to session 7, where I deal with the issue of electronic commerce strategy and implementation plans. I mean, look, everybody knows that you need to have a good strategy first. Before you think of structure, you think of skills acquisition and so on and so forth. So whilst technology is useful, and for the last 10, 20 years, it's all been E, we need to understand that the rigor and discipline of planning and strategy making that is required in brick and mortar concepts, you need the same rigor or even more if you are going to implement a solid e-business or e-commerce strategy. So by the time I finish discussing this session or module, I'm hoping that if you want to design and implement an e-business strategy and be able to understand how blogs or pages are managed on the internet as part of an e-business strategy. Now, there are things you need to consider in drawing a plan for e-business. So issues attendant to industry and competitive analysis, strategy formulation, implementation, and the whole thing regarding strategy recommendation are things we're going to look into now. Now, SWOT analysis is pretty standard if you want to succeed at e-business. So you need to do a certain monitoring, evaluation, and dissemination of information, both from your external and internal environments. Now, the discussions attendant to your internal strategic issues represent your strengths and your weaknesses. The discussions attendant to environmental threats and accompanying issues are the opportunities and threats in your external environment. So, if you want to look at internal factors or external factors, you need to look at things like what makes you strong, what's your core competence, what is your current human resource configuration looking like, what are your objectives, short, medium to long term, issues attendant to what makes me strong, what kind of customer segments do I serve much better than my immediate competitors. All those issues have to do with your internal strengths. Your weaknesses have to do with things attendant to your current technological profile, whether you experience technological obsolescence soon, whether there are larger competitors coming into the market, whether there's an influx of international competition. In a technological age, you need to be worried also of how the industry trends are shaping up. That's when we are discussing issues of the environmental scan. So what are the major threats in the environment? Local threats, international threats, even the threat of government and regulatory and legal mechanisms. All those things have to be sort of taken into cognizance when you do your industry and competitive analysis. So you do strategy formulation, taking into cognizance things like your mission and vision. Then you look at reasons for establishing a website and so on and so forth. Now, anytime you finish a SWOT analysis, it should usually conclude with a distillation of what we call key success factors or critical success factors, because that becomes sort of a distillation of where you are strong or weak internally and what's going to happen in the external environment, short, medium to long term, that would either mitigate against your growth or enhance your growth. So by the time you are looking at critical success factors, you should be considering things like what special products or services do I trade in? What kind of top management capacity do I have? What kind of project team quality do I have? What kind of customer experience nuances am I confronted with? What kind of customer needs and changing customer idiosyncrasies am I confronted with? What kind of competitor pressures do I face? What kind of project and corporate knowledge do I have in order to leverage my human capital to achieve sustained competitive advantage? What is the quality of my value chain network? Who are my suppliers? Who are my buyers? What kind of cooperation and trust exists with all these value chain people? So this value chain issue is very critical because if you want to maintain a strong strategic orientation in e-commerce or e-business, you need to do some kind of value analysis approach. Where am I strong? Where am I weak? What contributes to my profit and enhances my asset value? What makes me more competitive in the marketplace? How do I create additional value using electronic commerce channels? How does it make it more How do I outdo my rivals by leveraging my electronic commerce as assets? These are all things you need to consider. In doing your value analysis, you need to consider things like, how can I realize significant margins of consolidating parts of my value chain to my customers? Can I create significant value for customers by reducing the number of entities they have to deal with in my value chain? You need to ask questions like, can I offer additional information on transaction services to my existing customer base? Can I use my ability to attract customers to generate new sources of revenue, such as advertising or sales of complementary products? These are things we need to sort of ponder on, because at the end of the day, when you finish doing your value analysis, it should lead you to understand how to better acquire customers, how to better select customers, how to better retain customers, and how to use customers as an extension of your business by creating customer advocates who go and tell others about your brand so they come back and patronize same. So after you've done a distillation of your critical success factors and you want to formulate now some sort of competitive strategy to face the market with, you can choose what we call an offensive strategy. Now, an offensive strategy usually takes place in an established competitors market. So you typically are a challenger if you choose to deploy an offensive strategy. So you can use what we call frontal assault. Now, if you choose frontal assault, it is very key that you have superior resources and a willingness to fight for a long time. Because especially as challenger, market leaders usually have enough resources to battle you back if you go and attack them. So I'd advise you to use frontal assault in a very cautious manner. You guys what we call flanking maneuver, where you attack parts of the market where you believe your competitor is weak. You can also use what you call bypass attack, where you cut the market out from under the established defender or market leader by offering a new type of product that makes the competitor's product unnecessary and redundant to the market. Then you can use what you call encirclement, where you encircle the person you are attacking by creating greater product variety and or serve more markets than they currently do. Then you can use guerrilla warfare. This is where you hide in the bushes, come out, strike a little, using small intermittent assaults on different market segments. Then you go back and hide a bit. Then you come back and you strike again. That's guerrilla warfare. You hit, you dodge, you hit, you dodge. Then you can also use what we call defensive strategies as opposed to offensive strategies. Now, in defensive strategies, it takes place usually in the firm's own current market position as a defense against possible attack by a rival. So when you are defending, you divert attacks to less threatening avenues. You try and make your competitive advantage more sustainable so that you can lessen the intensity of any attack. Then, more than offensive or defensive, we have what we call cooperative strategies, where you can collude, you can form strategic alliances, you can form joint ventures, or you can go into what we call value chain partnerships. So, let's look at electronic commerce strategy in action. And in this phase of my presentation, I want to ask you to consider certain questions that are critical to the formulation of strong, enduring strategy in electronic commerce. First question to consider is, how is e-commerce going to change our business? How do we uncover new types of business opportunities using technology leveraging? How can we take advantage of new electronic linkages with customers and other value chain partners? Will intermediaries be eliminated in the process? Or do we become intermediaries ourselves because we are using e-commerce? How do we bring more buyers together electronically and keep them there? And how do we sort of change the nature of our products and services and sort of affect customers in ways that makes their experiences more positive than they were before we decide to introduce e-commerce or technology? How do we manage and measure the evolution of our strategy? In a lot of frontier markets, the issue is not the strategy formulation, it's the monitoring and the evaluation that is often the challenge. Let me discuss with you some key steps to successful electronic commerce programs. Conduct necessary education, repeated education, review current distribution and supply chain models, understand what your customers and partners expect from the web, reevaluate the nature of your products and services, extend your current systems to outside, give a new role to human capital, track new competitors, track their market share, track your own market share, and develop what we call a web-centric marketing strategy. Above all, participate in the creation and development of virtual marketplaces. So we've discussed in earlier sessions the issue of market intelligence, consumer research, and so on and so forth. And I want to recommend that in developing a strategic plan for the web, you also need to understand that you need to generate competitive intelligence on the internet, review competitor websites, analyze related news groups, use information delivery services, use research companies, solicit opinions in a chat room to get a sense of what kind of competitor intelligence you are faced with. So when it comes to the implementation of an e-commerce plan, start with the project team. Conduct a few pilot projects, then implement the electronic commerce. By one, redesign the existing business processes. Then you automate back-end processes as much as possible. And then you set up workflow applications by integrated your e-commerce into existing accounting and financial, marketing, procurement, and other related back-end management support services. Now, there are key things that companies that are leveraging e-commerce from a strategic standpoint need to take cognizance of. One, how digital markets operate. Two, how internet customers behave. Three, how competition is created and what infrastructure is needed. Now, I need to sound a note of caution here. When it comes to e-commerce and e-business, expensive does not always mean better. What I'm saying is that once you have a good strategy ab initio, you're able to determine the best value for money infrastructure you need in order to meet your strategic goals. So I'm saying that don't run around just shopping for expensive infrastructure at the expense of having a solid strategy in place first. So ultimately, you need to understand very well what the dynamics of electronic commerce dispensations or deployments are. So there are various opportunities that come from deploying an e-commerce strategy. You can have improved matchmaking. You can have improved negotiation capabilities from a price, quantity, and feature standpoint. You can improve your upselling capabilities and so on and so forth. So when it comes to organizing and staffing, in terms of e-commerce deployment, we need to define the roles and responsibilities of senior management, web champions, webmasters, gatekeepers, and the web team. All these sub-compartments have very pertinent roles to play in the success of the deployment of any e-commerce strategy. And if we move into outsourcing mode as part of deploying an e-commerce strategy, some of the key factors to consider include ease of configuration and setup, database and scripting support, issues of how our payment mechanisms will be configured, issues of sample storefronts, workflow management, and then integration into existing accounting and financial backends. When it comes to web hosting, it can be done internally or externally. It doesn't really matter. Look, the critical thing to note is what kind of system cost you are faced with, whether you host internally or you host using an ISP. Things like what kind of firewalls will you get, what kind of capabilities do you get, what kind of specs are you getting, issues addendums to after-sales support, maintenance, upgrade, and servicing of equipment. So, web content design. So, as part of web hosting, you need to take cognizance of your web catalogs, and then with content, you can have content that causes your web interface to change dramatically, or you can have content that focuses on building a certain dynamic capability of a website with very strong backends, and what you eventually get is a robust, comprehensive, and very useful medium. And it's good to choose the best software also for the development of your online storefronts. So you can either build your own software, you can purchase a commercial software product, or you can rent from a web host. It's really a question of quality and cost efficacy. So those are the things you need to take cognizance of. And when it comes to web content design, you need to be aware of extra fees that come with software development, issues of training requirements to make the website deliver on its strategic objectives, given the content, issues of bandwidth needs, the size of the website, the amount of traffic you envisage that the site will generate, issues of server capacity needs, issues of the time it will take to design the website, issues of how much your company can contribute to the site, from manpower to electronic content, and so on and so forth. The location of your server is also very important. And you can have several web application features in the deployment of an e-commerce strategy, from chat rooms to audio to video to various types of multimedia services, customer tracking, online catalogs, direct order procedures, issues of electronic and financial transactions, having an electronic shopping mall, issues of animation, cybersecurity. All these things are things that need to be taken cognizance of in developing web application features. And for me, the cybersecurity issue is very, very important from a frontiers market perspective. So as you develop the strategy, you need to keep assessing and reassessing its utility to the achievement of your strategic goals. And it's very important because I don't believe technology itself is a panacea for the growth of all businesses, but technology is an important enabler. So in developing e-commerce, e-business website solutions, you always need to demonstrate that it's a worthwhile project based on its ability to contribute to a stronger bottom line. And what's important is to develop a checklist of all the issues that you need to keep monitoring and evaluating to ensure that the expected return is achieved year after year after year. Thank you for your time.